Let's talk about a name you might not know, but whose work has shaped the entire spiritual sound of a nation for, get this, over 1,500 years. This is the incredible story of Saint Yared, the father of Ethiopian sacred music. But here's the real puzzle, the thing that makes his story so mind-blowing. How does someone who was, by every account, a failing student, turn around and compose a musical system so profound it's still at the very heart of a church today? That's the mystery we're going to dive into. So let's set the scene. We're going back to the 6th century to the thriving Aksumite Empire in what we now call Ethiopia. Aksum was a huge deal back then, a major hub for trade, culture, and learning. And it's right here that our story starts. But our guy Yared, he wasn't some star pupil. Oh no, far from it. In this bustling center of knowledge, young Yared was struggling, and not just a little bit, he was struggling badly. I mean, his failure was profound. He just couldn't get his lessons to stick. Simple memorization, like learning the Psalter, was basically impossible for him. His teacher, who also happened to be his uncle, would get so frustrated he'd beat him. As you can imagine, he became the butt of all the jokes with his classmates, and eventually, he just gave up. He lost all hope. So what do you do when you're feeling that ashamed and hopeless? Well, Yared made a decision. He fled. He just ran away from his school, from his teacher, from this life of failure, and he took refuge out in the wilderness. And it's here, at his absolute lowest point, that everything, and I mean everything, changed. So there he is, taking shelter from the rain under a tree when he spots this tiny caterpillar trying to climb up the trunk. He watches it try and fail. It falls, it tries again, and falls again. 6 times it tried and failed. But on the 7th attempt, that little caterpillar finally made it to the branch. And in that moment, something clicked for Yared. He had a total revelation. If this tiny insect could succeed just by being persistent, then so could he. All he needed was patience. So, filled with this brand new sense of purpose, Yared goes back to his uncle, Abba Gideon. He actually begged him for just one more chance to prove himself, promising that this time he would be patient. His uncle, well, he agreed. And what happened next is, well, it's the stuff of legends. It was like a switch had been flipped in his brain. The mind that was once totally shut off to learning was suddenly, miraculously wide open. The real question is, how quickly did this all happen? It took him just one single day. Yep, you heard that right. The legend says that in a single day, Yared mastered the entirety of the Old and New Testaments. He went from a kid who couldn't even memorize a psalm to a scholar who absorbed the whole Bible. It was a complete and some would say divine transformation. But you see, this newfound knowledge was just the foundation. Yared's true destiny wasn't just to understand Scripture, it was to give it a voice he would apparently receive from a source way beyond this world. The story goes that 3 birds, which were said to symbolize the Holy Trinity, appeared to Yared. They sang to him in his own language and then whisked him away to heaven itself, where he got to hear the 24 celestial angels singing praises to God. He didn't just hear the melodies, he absorbed their entire structure, their very essence. And when he returned to Earth, he brought this heavenly music back with him. Now, Yared didn't just write a few songs, he created an entire musical framework, a revolutionary system with 3 distinct modes. First, you have G's, which is this plain, majestic mode for ordinary days or for times of mourning. Then there's Esil, which is more measured and dignified for solemn occasions like funerals. And finally, you have Arare, a light, joyous, and complex mode for huge festivals and celebrations. He literally created a soundtrack for every sacred emotion. And this wasn't just, background music for church. It was powerful. It was entrancing. The effect it had on people was so profound, it was almost hypnotic. And there's a famous story involving the king himself that shows you just how powerful it was. Okay, so get this. One day, Yared is singing at the court of King Gibre Miskel. The king is so completely captivated, so lost in the beauty of the music, that he doesn't even realize he's leaning on his spear, and he drives the sharp point straight through Yared's foot. But Yared, who's just as lost in the sacred act of singing, is completely oblivious. He just kept on singing, with a pool of his own blood forming at his feet, feeling absolutely no pain, noticing nothing until the very last note faded away. You can imagine, when the king saw what he'd done, he was horrified and offered Yared any reward he could possibly want. But Yared didn't ask for gold or land or power.
Nope. Instead, he made a request that would turn his music from a simple performance into a legacy, one destined to echo for centuries.
He asked for just one thing: to be allowed to leave the court and live in solitude. He then dedicated the rest of his life to composing and, this is the crucial part, to teaching. He passed his divine knowledge to a whole generation of students who would become the guardians of his work, making sure it would never, ever be lost.
And the resilience of that legacy is just incredible. I mean, he composed this in the 6th century. His great hymn book, the Digwa, was nearly lost during invasions in the 16th century, only to be rediscovered. And now, today, 1,500 years after a struggling student got inspired by a little caterpillar, his music is still the vibrant, beating heart of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The story of St. Yared is for sure a powerful legend about failure, persistence, and maybe even divine inspiration. But it also makes you wonder, right? What does it really mean for one person's moment of insight, whether it came from a caterpillar or from heaven, to become the sacred sound of a nation for over 1,000 years? It kind of suggests that some melodies are more than just notes. They're truly echoes of eternity.